Once upon a time, I tried really hard to be happy. Then, I stopped trying to be happy, which actually made me happy. So how the hell does that work? Well, that's what I'm talking about this week. Here comes the intro, and then let's talk. Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Mental Health TV. I'm Jeremy Godwin. Thanks so much for joining me. This week I'm talking about why I stopped trying to be happy and how that actually made me feel happier. Do you know what makes you unhappy? Trying to be happy. Do you know why? Because when you try to be happy, it's like chasing the horizon. It always seems like it's just there, almost in your reach, but no matter how hard you run toward it, you will never catch it. And the reason for that is that, like the horizon, happiness is an illusion. When we feel happy, it's usually because we're experiencing pleasure or contentment. That can come from within, or it can come from an experience with something or someone. But you'll notice that I said experience, which is very different to things. And somehow we seem to have found ourselves in a position where things and status, all of that stuff has more value than experiences. Let me ask you a question, and there's no right and wrong answer, and I promise I will not judge you one way or the other. Let's say that you have an opportunity to go on an all-expenses-paid trip with your partner or your closest friend, but you also have the option to ditch the trip for a brand new wardrobe right now full of designer clothes. Which one do you choose? And then now, let's flash forward 10 years. If you took the clothes, how many of them still fit you? How many of them are still in fashion? And of those that are still in fashion, what state are they in? How often do you actually wear them or even use them? And most importantly, do any of them still give you the same thrill that they did when you first received them? Because we need to be aware that research indicates the initial excitement and happiness that we feel when we acquire new things eventually fades over time. Because once we have it, then we start to focus on the next thing that we want. But when it comes to our experiences, they stay with us forever. I still have fantastic and joyful memories of trips that I've taken or wonderful evenings spent with great friends from years and even decades ago. When we try to chase after happiness, we quickly discover that it is not a permanent state. And so if you keep on chasing after it, you'll find that over time, it takes more and more to give you that same level of happiness that you previously felt. And when all of that is tied up in stuff and money or status, well, it's exhausting and you end up with diminishing returns. I used to use money as a way of trying to fill the void in my heart and distract myself from the things that were making me miserable. And guess what? It didn't work. I ended up having a total breakdown in late 2011, mainly because I wasn't dealing with my mental health, but money was part of that. And I spent several years with severe depression and anxiety, and I still live with anxiety today. I was in such a financial mess because I was using money to try to fill those voids that I ended up having to declare bankruptcy in 2014 because I was broke. I couldn't work because of the depression and anxiety, so I couldn't pay my bills. You can imagine, they kind of want their money, funnily enough. And it forced me to take a long, hard look at everything in my life and reconsider my priorities. That led to leaving the city in 2015 and moving to the country where I live now, and also completely changing my relationship with money and stuff. Now, I'm not advocating that you need to leave the city if that's where you live now, but what I'm saying is that what I learned along the way was that instead of trying really hard to be happy and doing things that I thought would make me happy, instead, I could choose to focus on living a life that felt purposeful and meaningful. I made a commitment to myself not to work more than 30 hours a week, and I stick to that religiously now. And I use my non-working time to focus on my growth and learning about as much stuff as I possibly can, especially to do with well-being. And guess what? All of that makes me feel so much more satisfied in my life in general, which has led to greater happiness without even trying. So suddenly here I am, feeling happier than I've ever been, even though I'm still dealing with challenges and difficulties and anxiety. And I've spent quite a few months recently dealing with grief and lapsing in and out of emotional eating. The thing is that true happiness is not the absence of problems. It's about living in a way that satisfies you in spite of the problems that we all inevitably face in life. So like I said, I'm not saying that you need to move to the country or go sell everything and live in an ashram, although if that works for you, go for it. But here are a few key things to consider about happiness. Number 1, rethink your relationship with money. Money really is just a means to an end. If you're stuck in the cycle of lusting after more and more money, then I hate to break it to you, but you will be trapped in that cycle either for eternity or until you stop it and get off that train, that cycle. Work out what your base expenses are realistically, and then focus on generating consistent income to live comfortably, and then focus the rest of your energy on how to make the most out of life. If you're living to work, then you are focused on the wrong thing. Work to live instead. Number 2 is rethink your relationship with stuff. Do you really need a house full of the latest gadgets? No. That doesn't mean that you don't have stuff. I mean, look, I have stuff, but it's about being more thoughtful and much more mindful about what you actually consume. There is a very big difference between need and want, and it's up to you to be really honest with yourself about which one is being triggered when you see something that you think that you need. Because most of the time, you don't actually need it, it's actually a want. Number 3, stop trying to compete with others. It doesn't matter what your friends have or your neighbors, and you are not in competition with anybody in this life except for yourself. We spend so long worried about what everyone else will think about us that we forget to focus on being the best version of ourselves possible. So instead of trying to keep up with the Joneses, focus on doing no harm, being kind, and giving more than you take. Number 4, don't do things that make you feel miserable. Everything you do and say in life is a choice. So if something is making you miserable and you're not doing anything about it, then you are making a choice not to do anything about it. Life is way too precious to feel overwhelmed by misery. So make changes where you need to, and if that's proving difficult, get help. Number 5, do more of what makes you feel satisfied. Hopefully this one goes without saying. Like Sheryl Crow saying, if it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. I make a point of considering each thing and asking myself if it does no harm, is kind, and serves to give more than it takes. And if the answer is yes to all 3, then go for it. And just remember that those 3 questions are about yourself as well as others, not just other people. So what I'm saying here is do what makes you feel satisfied, but make sure that you are making healthy choices because you don't want to be doing harm to yourself. You need to be kind to yourself. And then my bonus tip is just to have more fun. Look, happiness is a byproduct of having fun. It's not something that you can necessarily pursue, but if you are doing things to have fun, generally you will find yourself feeling more happy. So find as many moments for joy as you can each and every day. So let me know in the comments which things made you think and what suggestions you have for greater satisfaction. And thanks for joining me this week. Take care and talk to you next time.